everyone. Welcome back to the Family Source Consultants podcast. And today we have the pleasure of having one of our legal partners joining us. And Marla, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining today's episode. How are you?
Very good. I'm very happy to be here and share all you want to know about Florida and surrogacy law.
There you go. That's exactly right. So today we'll be talking about the Florida surrogacy law and especially the recent changes. But for those who may not know you yet, tell us a little bit about yourself, your role at Greenspoon Martyr, and what led you into the field.
Sure. Well, my name is Marla Neufeld. I'm a Florida reproductive attorney. I work at a large law firm named Greenspoon Martyr. We are a national law firm, and I'm based in South Florida. And what got me into surrogacy law is I am a former intended parent. So I have 12-year-old twin boys born through surrogacy. So my personal experience completely shaped my professional experience, and that's why I am doing what I do today.
That's wonderful. And, we know you take such great care of intended parents and, walk them through the legal process and answer any legal questions they have. And I wonder because, you walk the walk yourself, when you became a parent, and we really do we always appreciate that, personal connection to what intended parents are going through from the professionals. And that's, similar to Family Source Consultants. A lot of our staff members are personally, or have personal experience to surrogacy or fertility treatments, and I think that really makes a difference. But
Absolutely.
So let's dive into today's topic. And today we're talking about Florida surrogacy law. Can you just bring up to date what happened in Florida in I would say this year? And I know there is a new law that became effective on July 1st. So can you just talk about the new law on a very high level to the people out there who don't know about the recent law change yet?
Absolutely. So Florida surrogacy laws have been in place and have been unchanged for the past 30 years. And this past legislative session was the first legislative efforts we've seen to modify our laws in any way. So at the beginning of the session, there was a bill proposed that was much more wide-sweeping effort to try and modify our laws. It had agency regulations, background checks, all these different provisions. That bill never got traction. We were monitoring it very closely. And by we, I mean the group of Florida lawyers that came together to help lobby for friendly surrogacy supportive laws in Florida. Mm-hmm. We also hired a lobbyist to help advocate for friendly laws in Florida. What ended up happening was there was a bill going through the Florida House and Senate for foreign influence, basically trying to limit businesses and interactions with certain countries that the state of Florida deems a foreign country of concern. That bill had no reference to surrogacy, had nothing to do with family building. And the very last day of the very last committee meeting on that bill, a legislator in Florida added on an amendment to the bill regarding surrogacy in Florida. And it gave no opportunity for comments in the committees. We had no chance to go to Tallahassee to give our position on it. It just got introduced and passed within a matter of days.
Wow.
So at the end of the day, what we ended up is what's called the FIRE Act. It's a foreign influence bill. It was House Bill 905 that ultimately got passed. And at the end of the day, what's important to know from this new change is that no party to a surrogacy agreement in Florida can be a citizen or a resident of what's deemed a foreign country of concern. Mm-hmm. And if you'd like, I can list the countries now, unless you want to get into it a little bit later.
Maybe we can talk about that just a little bit later when we, dive into the details.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.
That's the general sense was what we ended up with. Our laws are still in place as they've been for 30 years. It's basically like an add-on of making sure that the parties are not a citizen or a resident of any particular certain countries.
Right. Thank you so much for, sharing the background. I did not know some of the details. I'm literally hearing that hearing some of this for the first time. So My understanding is, initially when the bill was first introduced, we were concerned that the surrogacy law would be impacted in many, or in more aspects than what the final law actually does. Is that correct?
Yes, it was a total reshaping of what was initially
Mm-hmm.
introduced. We were concerned for single
Mm-hmm.
parents, same-sex couples. The initial bill had background checks imposed after the
Mm-hmm.
birth of the child that
Wow.
would have had criminal implications if there was something that came up in a background check. It would have delayed court proceedings in Florida. That bill just literally didn't go to one committee. It just didn't get any traction, which we're thankful for.
Right, right.
And then just they kind of, it was like a bait and switch to throw, they wanted to get something in. So they threw this into to a totally different bill. Like I said, it had
Wow.
nothing to do with surrogacy.
Wow. Well, I am glad, the original bill was nowhere close to, being effective, and
Absolutely.
it did not get any traction. So now let's talk about foreign countries of concern. And I am
Sure.
dying to hear the list, and I'm sure our viewers are dying to hear the list as well. Can you tell us what the countries are on the list?
Yes. Thankfully, it's relatively short,
Mm-hmm.
although, it's unlike any law across the nation that's, pertaining to surrogacy. So the list includes, drum roll, please, just kidding. The list of foreign countries under Florida law includes the People's Republic of China, the Russian Federation, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the People's Republic of North Korea, the Republic of Cuba, the Venezuelan regime under Maduro, the Syrian Arab Republic, and then kind of like a catch-all, a vague catch-all of any agency or any other entity of significant control of such foreign country of concern. So essentially, in short, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and Syria.
Syria. I see. Okay, so it's a list of 7 countries, but what does that really mean when it comes to, practice, when it comes to actual surrogacy? So does that mean intended parents from these countries would not be allowed to work with a, Florida surrogate? Or, what if the intended parents are based in the US, but they hold citizenship from one of those
Yeah,
countries?
great questions, and a lot of those, we would have loved to have been addressed in the law. They weren't.
Oh,
So what people need to know, and it's so important that people know this at the very beginning, like of pursuing surrogacy with a Florida surrogate, because you do not want to get into legal or further down the road and then find out that this is an issue. But no party to the agreement can be a citizen or a resident. So it cannot be either of the intended parents, or a single intended parent cannot
mhm,
be a resident or a
right.
citizen of one of those countries.
Okay.
Also, the surrogate cannot be a citizen or a resident of one of those countries, and neither can her spouse or if a partner is joining in the agreement. So, no party to the arrangement.
Hmm.
So, you have to be careful because it's very common in South Florida for people to be living here on green cards or sometimes
Right,
on asylum,
right,
but they're citizens of Cuba still, and they have
right.
not renounced their citizenship. So,
Hmm.
my take that the strict reading of the law is if you're still a citizen, even if you're a dual citizen,
Hmm.
I don't think you can proceed with surrogacy in Florida if any party is a citizen, even a dual citizen
Wow.
of one of these countries. It's open to interpretation, and I personally don't want to be the test case that
Hmm.
has
Yeah, sure.
to fight that. So,
Right, right.
I would imagine the intent of the law was probably a U.S. citizen, even though their dual would be fine. But I think there's risk to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly sounds like it, and I'm sure we'll know more as time goes on, and some cases may get challenged in court.
It's true,
Um, so you mentioned residence. What if say an intended parent or a surrogate has lived in one of those countries in the
right?
past, but is not, a citizen there, and now they live in the U.S. Would that matter?
Right. Yeah, I think we have to. It's going to be a case by case analysis of how we define what your residency is. I mean, sometimes there's a tax definition of it, of what you deem your residence.
Hmm.
Spending some time somewhere for a short period of time, or visiting a place for a certain time period. I wouldn't necessarily call that where you reside.
Right,
So I
right.
think that this is going to be something we're going to look at case by case. If there's any question, I think it's important that you speak to an attorney in Florida
Hmm.
to analyze it properly before you get too deep into the process. And I think it's important for Family Source and as an agency to know, and I know you guys have jumped on this from day one, to be aware of that this is something that impacts your intake, obviously, when
Hmm.
you're matching anyone in
Hmm.
Florida, to make sure that we don't bump up against this new part of our law.
Yeah, absolutely. So now a question I'm sure a lot of people want to know for, say the intended parents that are either residents of, those seven countries or citizens of those seven countries, what should they do? Or what can they do if they still want to pursue surrogacy in the United States?
I mean, I guess what we saw in Florida is you always have to be aware of that the laws can change and they can change
Hmm.
quickly. So I think it's
Hmm.
important to speak to an attorney in the state you're considering to understand kind of the political climate in that
Hmm.
state to see if this happened in Florida, what felt like overnight. I know that there's legislation efforts right now going on in Texas with almost identical language. So I think they need to consider from these countries the climate of that state, speak to an attorney, understand if there's any potential legislation. Because I mean, as of now, this is
Hmm.
just a Florida thing. But
Yep.
I do think that nationally,
Hmm.
there's a saying that one of my colleagues says that when Florida sneezes, the rest of the country gets a cold. So, um, you know, so we'll have to kind of they just need to be aware and
Right.
possibly adapt. So, there's cases now of, parents and surrogates from these countries that entered
Hmm.
into arrangements before the law changed on July 1 of 2026. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of pivoting and understanding how to handle this,
Right.
when there's a change mid process.
I see. Yeah. Well, I was actually just going to ask, do you see this as a trend? Maybe not necessarily nationwide, but at least in some other states as well. And I think you kind of just answered that question already.
Yeah, potentially, yes. I mean, I
Hmm.
think that, the current climate is much more conservative than it's been in the past. And
Right.
like I said, like immediately after this, Texas is doing trying to do the same exact thing. And in fact, I don't know if it's the first time ever, but I know that recently there's federal legislation regarding governing surrogacy, which has historically been a state law issue.
Right. Yeah.
It's not for foreign citizens, but it's screening out sex offenders and
Hmm.
imposing implications for anyone that allows a sex offender to proceed with surrogacy. So I think there's just a trend in general of
Right.
potential changes that parties just
Hmm.
need to kind of be ready to adapt.
Yeah. So what's your advice for international intended parents? Especially intended parents from those seven countries and, even, intended parents from other countries, because I think, when someone, especially an international intended parents, an international intended parent is thinking about pursuing surrogacy in the United States, it's already a lot for them to
Of course.
understand and learn and take in. Um, on top of that, there are different state laws. Each state has their own laws, and there's a lot of changes. What is your advice for international intended parents who are thinking about
Yeah.
going through surrogacy in the United States, but are really just overwhelmed by the information and the laws and the change of laws?
So, for an international intended parent pursuing surrogacy in the United States, I think just with the example of Florida with a recent change to our law, I think it just shows the emphasis of how important it is for the intended parents to be in good communication with their lawyer
Hmm.
at really multiple stages of the process, not just at the time of the contract and when it's time to go to court. I think that the
Hmm.
parents should be in good communication before they start to really understand, is this a good environment for me to proceed? Do you foresee any changes in the law? And if something were to change, what are my other options? Like I know
Hmm.
I had clients contacting me to say, okay, if the courts interpret this as applying retroactively, which we don't think it will, for cases that predated July 1,
Hmm.
is there somewhere else that I can go outside of outside of Florida to still get parentage. So
Hmm.
it's understanding your plan A, your plan B, and
Right.
just really being in good communication with your lawyer, and your agency, so everybody's on board with what the plans might be. Because if, God forbid, a surrogate had to deliver in another state, that doesn't just
Hmm.
happen in a vacuum. That requires a lot of support from the agency, from the lawyers, from the parents, in the agreement, things will need to be updated. We haven't seen that needed in Florida, but it's something that we have to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's fantastic advice. And that's also something we always advise, not only international intended parents, domestic intended parents as well. When you are, when you're thinking about
Absolutely.
starting your surrogacy journey, talk to all these professionals. A lot of people, will start talking with a fertility center, a surrogacy agency, but it's equally important to start talking with an attorney to really
Yeah.
understand what the, legal process looks like and what is the best practice for you.
And I know you guys do that in action. I mean, just this week, FSC referred me some parents, just potential parents, just thinking about the
Mm-hmm.
process. They're not in it yet, but they want to get the landscape. And I'm happy to speak to people to understand what kind of is on the horizon so they
Mm-hmm.
understand the process. And I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, wonderful. So my next question is, regarding this Fire Act, have you heard of any misconceptions about it, or maybe just like, things people talk about when they don't know all of the details about the
Right.
law? So, what are some of the misconceptions that you would like to clear up?
I mean, the biggest one that we saw at first is people thought it only applied to the parents. The parents couldn't be from this one of the countries of foreign
Mm-hmm.
concern. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's extremely important for everyone to understand that it's not just the parents, it's also the
Right,
surrogate
right.
and her spouse or partner if they're going to be a party to the agreement. And like I
Mm,
said, in Florida, it's so common for people to be here um, on a green card and or possibly
right.
be a dual citizen. So
Yeah.
it's important that you think about it from all the parties. That would be the biggest misconception um, that I seen. And then it's just kind of there's a lot of vague language in the bill. Like for example, it says Venezuela under the regime of Maduro. So like,
Mm-hmm.
are we under his regime? I don't think so, but I don't know.
Right,
So we
right,
have to
right.
be extra cautious and err on the side of it's probably Venezuela just in general. So
Yeah.
um, what is defined as the People Republic of China? What parts of, outside of China does that mean? So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of just questions, like some that I just don't think we're going to have clarity on until just time goes by and we see what gets challenged or how the courts handle it.
I see. Um, So, thank you for sharing that, and that it's very helpful. And so, looking ahead, what do you hope for the future of surrogacy laws? What do you think it may change? Do you think there will be more changes in the short term, or what are you hoping for in terms of surrogacy law in
Yeah.
Florida?
I mean, so the Florida lawyers, like I mentioned at the beginning, have all come together in such an incredible way to
Mm-hmm.
help advocate for family supportive laws in Florida, like, to create families for all loving people that want to build their families. So we do welcome change in the law, but we want it to be as inclusive as possible for any parent to have, that wants to build their family through surrogacy. But we do welcome, certain safeguards if the Florida legislator feels that change is needed, although our law has been the way it's been for 30 years with, no, issues free in Florida.
Right.
So we're open to just, we're working now on proposed legislation and we have a lobbyist that's helping us to advocate our position to have certain safeguards that could work, similar to some other states that have passed recently laws, regarding surrogacy that provide good protections for all the parties.
Mm-hmm. I
But as far
see.
as change, we have to we're so closely monitoring what happens so that we don't get blindsided like what happened last year because it really came
Right.
out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And like I said, we have a lobbyist retained who have boots on the ground in Tallahassee, Florida, where this will all happen,
Oh.
where all the legislators are, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
best we can do at this time.
Wow. I know you guys, especially you and your firm, and along with other Florida attorneys, made so much effort, and you guys were trying so hard to advocate for, friendly surrogacy law, and you guys held discussions,
Thank you.
and we participated in some of that. So we really, really
Yes,
do appreciate, all of the efforts you guys made, and on behalf of, the agencies and the intended parents and surrogates, just anyone that's involved in surrogacy, and I think it is important for for the lawmakers to see this side as well, because it just seems like, especially based on what you shared, there was no heads up, there was no public discussion. It was just written into the bill, and it was introduced the day before
absolutely.
it was passed.
Yes.
It's kind of crazy.
And we, it doesn't go unnoticed how much we appreciate Family Source and their support of the legislative efforts that we've done in Florida. We know you guys have been there with us, and we really appreciate it. It's certainly been such a collaborative, in a hard time of what we just went through. It was really amazing to see everybody pull together. So
Yeah.
there's like kind of the silver lining in this whole thing. And I do want to mention that the Florida lawyers and other supporters created a 501c4 called the Florida Family Building Advocates, the
Okay.
FFBA. And I can provide additional information, but the FFBA is basically an entity that we're using to advocate. It's the group that hired the lobbyist, and that's how, that coming together organization to
Hmm.
support friendly laws in Florida.
Oh, that's wonderful. I will make sure I personally check it out. And anyone who's listening out
Great.
there, please, check this out if you get a chance and support,
Thank you. Yeah, we
our.
have updates and we have a social media page on Facebook where we have pictures and videos and any, notable information. So it's a great resource. We really mobilized quickly. I've never been involved in creating a 501c4, but now I've done it.
Wonderful.
And it's great to come together to work to a common goal of family building.
Absolutely, and I really do feel like, from what happened in the, like last several months, and I do see how united our community is. And this is, something I would say a lot of intended parents or even surrogates probably don't get to see, because, to them, we're the professionals helping them
Right.
with their journey and stuff. But behind the scenes, we really do work together, and we advocate for better laws, for better overall, climate, and just for a better future, in surrogacy and family building for intended parents. And
Right.
I think it's so important.
I agree. Yes, and there's always room to improve, and I think if we work together and collaborate, the best outcome will come from that.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I do have two more questions that I really wanted to ask, and since
Sure,
we have you, I wanted to absorb all
please
of your
ask
knowledge. And so, does this
ask away.
Fire Act impact egg donation or sperm donation in any way?
Great question, and no, it does not. It only pertains to surrogacy in Florida.
Okay.
So
Okay.
as a, the nothing in Florida changed at all regarding egg, sperm, or embryo donation. There's no residency, no citizenship requirements or prohibitions with
Hmm.
donation of genetic material.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
Great
And
question,
another, thank you.
though.
Another question is, sometimes intended parents have concerns about abortion laws. So this may not be
Okay.
particularly, surrogacy law, but like, and of course, Florida is not the only state that has some sort of restriction on abortion. So, as far as I know, in Florida, abortion within 6 months of pregnancy is allowed, but beyond the sorry, not 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 weeks.
Right. It used to
Beyond
be 6 months.
beyond 6 weeks, it gets challenging. What is your advice to intended parents who have concerns about about the abortion law in
Sure.
in Florida?
Yeah, so just to clarify, the Fire Act did not impact our abortion laws either. It was just the citizenship and the residency issue. But in Florida, we do have restrictive abortion laws that are seen in other states across the country.
Hmm.
And so a couple things that come to mind with that. The matching process is just that much more important, that the parties see eye to eye
Hmm.
with what the intended parents' wishes are if something did happen, with an abnormality or something came up, and that they align with the wishes and the thoughts and the philosophical outlook that the surrogate has. This is nothing new in surrogacy matching, but it's just so important, and even more so in a restrictive state. Because
Right.
at the end of the day, a parent cannot force legally a surrogate to have an abortion. No
Hmm.
judge is going to make her have or not have an abortion or a selective reduction. So,
Right.
step one is obviously make sure everybody's aligned.
Hmm.
As far as the way we handle it from a legal standpoint, is as long as the parties are okay with this concept, we put into the agreement that the surrogate agrees it's her intent that she would travel outside of the state of Florida to have the abortion typically at a mutually agreed place at the expense of the parent or the parents, because nothing in Florida restricts her legal ability to travel outside the state. And of course, we put in the contract that the travel would only be as long as it doesn't implicate anybody civilly or criminally.
Hmm.
Because of course, things could change. We don't anticipate it. We think that the right to travel is a constitutional right to, move freely within the United States. But that's how we address it. And of course, even the travel, though, you have to make sure, is she okay with that? Because if she doesn't want to travel, she can't be forced to. So that's how we address it. It's just really making sure that to the best of everyone's ability that they're aligned on this topic.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us today, Marla. So before we let you go, and I just wanted to, well, first I wanted to say to all the viewers out there, yes, the, Florida surrogacy law has some recent changes, but don't be afraid. Just don't think, oh, Florida is no longer a good state for surrogacy. The reality is not exactly like that, and just like Marla explained, it impacts parties involved in the surrogacy agreement from 7 countries on the list, and those are the foreign countries of concern. But my general advice to intended parents is always speak with an attorney and really understand what the law implies and how does it impact your case. And I want to get your final advice to intending parents out there as well, not just intending parents who are thinking about going through surrogacy in Florida, but in general intending parents who are considering building their families through surrogacy. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like good communication is just so important. And that goes to between the parents and the lawyer, the parents and the surrogate, with their agency, with their clinic. I think the more communication, the better, that people feel informed, that they know what they're doing, they can ask questions about the process. So I just think that leads to like a beautiful, well informed journey.
Hmm.
Because I think when people don't communicate well and there could be a breakdown. And
Right.
so I see that as one of like the strongest aspects of this whole process that leads to a really great outcome.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much again,
Yeah,
Marla, for joining us today. And I personally learned so much from this
good.
discussion, and I'm sure everyone out there who is listening and watching this will learn so much. And if you are interested in growing your family through surrogacy, and if you are looking for an attorney, Marla Neufeld is a fantastic asset, and then we know that you'll be in
Thank
great
you.
hands working with her. So if you're interested in being in touch with Marla, please feel free to reach out to her firm directly, or reach out to Family Source Consultants. We'll be more than happy to put you in touch with Marla. Okay?
Thank you. Such an honor to be here. It's always so wonderful collaborating with Family Source. And if the agency or any of your clients ever have questions about Florida, please do not hesitate to reach out. I'll be happy to chat further.
Awesome. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you again, Marla.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
everyone,
having
for
me.
listening. Have a good one.